Jason Hall was born on July 17, 1987. Not much is known about his early life other than him going to Tustin High School and graduating in 2006. According to his LinkedIn, he worked as a freelance security researcher and developer starting from the age of 15, but it seems there isn't anything to show for it. However, what he didn't include on his LinkedIn was that in 2006 he started his own company called Dark Sphere Creations. To understand this company, we have to talk about Second Life, which is an online RPG game that Jason would play under the username Maldavius Figtree. Second Life is a game where you can put a lot of money in, but also make a lot of money. Dark Sphere Creations was meant to do this, where he created and sold character models. Well, he wasn't really the one who would sculpt the 3D avatars. Apparently he worked on the scripting part of this, which is likely a lot less work, especially when he apparently just copied scripts he found elsewhere. One person who worked for him claimed Jason barely did any work at all. The employee with the username Wingless Emoto was the one who would build all the character models for him, and he eventually fired her and continued to harass her afterwards as well. He also continued to sell all the models she made and took all the profit for himself. Wingless Emoto and him have since reconciled and are no longer in conflict with each other. Still, this would be the first display of Jason's massive ego and tendency to abuse power. Side tangent. The character models Jason was selling were sexualized humanoid furry avatars. Jason is a furry with the fursona of him being a ferret. He even had a page on WikiFur, but he managed to get it taken down. He would do everything to hide this dark part of his past for years, and it worked for a while. We'll get to that later.
In 2009, Jason managed to get a job at Blizzard as a quality assurance analyst. The reason he was able to get this job is because his father is Joey Ray Hall, who was one of the first people who ever worked at Blizzard. Joey Ray Hall is also famously the likeness used in the World of Warcraft episode on South Park. Basically, Jason is a nepo baby. It should be noted that Jason's time in Blizzard, he was never actually a software developer, let alone a game developer as normal people would think of it. Jason likely wrote very little code and worked more on testing various surrounding web systems or doing social engineering work on company employees. That's when he'd work, of course. During his tenure, Jason was not a very good employee. According to a former coworker of Jason, on the average day, Jason would create a client window and let it idle while he surfed Reddit all day. Apparently, he requested a third monitor and just used it to browse Reddit. The coworker actually tried reporting his behavior, but nobody higher up would do anything about it because they were scared of being blacklisted for potentially having to fire the son of an executive. Here we have a prime example of Jason exploiting his nepotism. In the future, he would talk so much about how he worked at Blizzard and how he's an industry elite, despite mainly only writing tests.
This coworker was also a short-lived roommate with Jason. Unsurprisingly, he was a terrible roommate, screaming while playing games at night, refusing to clean anything, having a cat who'd destroy furniture, the whole rounds. He'd never take responsibility for this destruction either. He'd mostly rage while playing the game EVE Online, which he's going to get into trouble with later.
In 2016, Jason left Blizzard. He temporarily worked at Amazon Games as an automation engineer. Not much of note coming from this arc, other than he claims to have programmed in Python. Python is a great language, but it's not exactly a language normally used for game development, since it's an incredibly slow language. He also worked at Eagle Research Group as a cybersecurity specialist. This is the source of his claims of working for the government. The government would contract out some physical security testing to Eagle Research Group, so Jason wasn't doing any kind of terminal movie hacking like you were thinking. He was checking to see if any doors or windows were unlocked and running pre-made scanners and just submitting the reports the scanners would generate. While this is hacking in a sense, Jason purposely talks about it as though he was doing code hacking on nuclear power plants to make himself look good to those that are unfamiliar with the industry and work done in it.
The big news of 2016 for Jason was that he'd start his own game company called Piratesoftware, where his username finally comes in. He would create and release his first game, Champions of Breakfast, in the same year. He claimed this game was unpiratable because he tied the Steam achievements to the game progression, not realizing how easy this is to crack. Before this game though, Jason would announce his most ambitious project, Heartbound, a game inspired by Undertale. The planned date for release was 2017. A year later, he produced a GoFundMe in early 2017, and he set a low goal of 5,000 that he knew he'd easily surpass in order to be able to hype this game. And then the delays started happening. First, it was pushed back to mid-2018, then the early accessed unfinished version was released in late 2018. Then in 2019, the section on his FAQ asking about when the game will be released was suspiciously removed. Then in 2021, he released another update saying he lost 9 months of work due to long COVID. He still streamed during this period, by the way. Then in 2023, he said that he'd be releasing Chapter 3 of the game that very next year. It was never released, and his new excuse was he now had COVID for 2 years straight. This development hell and endless delaying of the release is still going on today, and many people noticed he spent all his time playing WoW or just streaming where he barely worked on the game.
We're going to segue into his hacking claims next because during the years of development hell, Jason claimed to have won several badges and competitions at DEF CON, a famous hacking convention. However, these challenges were always done in larger teams, and there's nothing tangible Jason can use to prove what his contributions were at the time. Jason also claimed to fix botting issues in World of Warcraft by placing a rock in a normal path segment in the game, but this story is likely an altered exaggeration of something someone else did at Blizzard.
Finally, we want to touch on something he mentions a lot in his hacking and security claims: social engineering. Jason mentions how much he uses social engineering when it comes to DEF CON and his time hacking at Blizzard, etc. This part we wholeheartedly believe. Social engineering is when you manipulate someone into performing actions or giving up crucial information. It requires someone who's really good at lying, is able to sound authoritative, is able to come across as competent without being so, and has a whole bunch of people who buy into their bull. It makes perfect sense as to why Jason would be really good at social engineering. In 2020, Jason would get into trouble on the game EVE Online. I've never played EVE, so we're sorry if we get a lot of details wrong here. Jason and his faction found an uninhabited area in the game where he and his group would take ownership of the space. This area had some bugs going on though, which Jason took very personally. Once the area was fixed, the in-game income of Jason and his faction skyrocketed as nobody was there at the time. Jason was also a CSM at the time, and he advocated for easier access to this area. Naturally, because of the money he and his peers were making, many other enemy players kept invading the area, and his faction actually had to work to protect it this time. Jason pretended this was some huge unfair burden and complained endlessly about it. There was another bug in the area which reduced XP that other players would trigger, and he pretended that this was all some big personal attack against him, so he rage quitted the game permanently and released a video slandering the game and its developers.
Around 2023, Jason would skyrocket in popularity by taking advantage of YouTube Shorts. Specifically by not notifying subscribers, Shorts would be pushed out to new unsubbed viewers. This new popularity on audience would be convenient since they didn't know anything about his previous controversies. He won a streamer award in 2023 and in 2024. He also partnered with a fellow streamer, Jellywig, and created a new company called Off-Brand Games. Off-Brand Games was the publisher of a game called Rivals of Feather 2, which in their own words was a more live service type of game. Remember this, it's important. In 2024, the YouTuber Accursed Farms, also known as Ross, created a consumer movement called Stop Killing Games. SKG is an initiative which wants to give more consumer rights to gamers, specifically in the realm of live service games. For example, a live service game could offer a single player mode that can be played offline or allow private servers of itself to be created by the people who play the games. The overall idea is to make sure consumers can actually own their games and continue playing them in some state after they reach their end of life. The initiative got so much traction that official government petitions were made. Well, Jason inserted himself into this and had a lot of garbage and nonsense to say about it. Most of his criticism of the initiative were strawmanned or simply made up excuses, and he would ignore a lot of the strong rebuttals that Ross would give, such as game companies allowing players to make and host their own servers. Ross responded to Jason quarterly, offering to talk, but Jason refused to speak with Ross on multiple occasions, giving different excuses each time, sometimes saying there was nothing to talk about, Ross is a garbage man, or sometimes saying everyone should eat my entire ass.
In 2025, the downfall would begin. Jason was playing a version of classic WoW called Hardcore WoW, where if you died permanently. Jason was also a part of a guild called OnlyFangs. During a dungeon raid, things went wrong, and the team had to bail. Jason would cast a max level Blizzard to get away, lying about how he's out of mana, refusing to help the others, even though it was clear to see that he had many mana recovery items. This caused two players to lose hundreds of hours of progress. This time the controversy hit him like a truck. He kept refusing to apologize, playing the victim, putting the blame on others, his usual tactics when he's in trouble. This time was different though. He had many eyes on him due to his popularity, and he couldn't get away with just telling his side of the story since the other players has significant social media presences as well. One by one people would come out and start taking their turns dunking on him. He would try issuing false copy strikes and false community guidelines reports to the first YouTubers who called him out, but that would only make things worse. To add to this bad situation, he decided to release a follow-up video to his first SKG video, which really amplified the hate towards him. First, he was kicked out of his WoW guild. Then people started seriously investigating the claims of Jason cheating in puzzle games. The accusations ended up being true in the end. Afterwards, Heartbound was flooded with negative Steam reviews due to its lack of updates. His past controversies also came into light once again, such as his toxic behavior in Second Life and EVE Online, and the fact that he's a furry as well. Most damning though, he was exposed for being a fake developer.
Remember what we said earlier, Jason's experience in the game industry is almost entirely QA work on web services or social engineering, not game development. Jason's code would then be reviewed by several developers, including CodeJesus and myself. In a nutshell, Jason would code like a complete amateur that had zero experience. He used magic numbers everywhere, wouldn't use loops, and would have files reaching thousands upon thousands of lines of repeated code. Jason's GitHub account is also entirely empty other than a few bug reports, something unusual for a dev streamer.
After having everything exposed, Ross from Accursed Farms came out with another video talking about stopkillinggames and highlighted Jason's bad behavior. This was a genius move on his part, as everyone had massive hate boners for this guy and wanted to do something about it. And it happened. During all this hate against piratesoftware, YouTubers would also mention SKG and ask people to support it. This included Penguin Zero, Jacksepticeye, PewDiePie, and others. SKG went from missing its goal by a long shot to exceeding it. A huge win just to spite Jason. Now these issues will be presented and deliberated on by the EU government.
In the end, Jason refused to admit that he was ever wrong about anything and would ignore all the criticism against him. His own ego overtook him and his reputation did a 180 overnight. He would step down from Off-Brand Games in July of the year. He lost around 600,000 subscribers on YouTube, 200,000 followers on Twitch, and his Twitch numbers went down from averaging 10k viewers to just 2k. And lastly, a sure sign of someone who has nothing to hide and who stands by everything they've said and done, he deleted around 377 videos and hid all his past live streams on YouTube.
He still streams and releases videos, but his numbers are lower than ever. And he still hasn't released Chapter 3 of Heartbound. Who knows if he ever will.